Obviously, as any logical Tarantino fan would do, I'm doing these together.
That makes sense.
Because they were meant to be one movie. That was like 5 hours long. And it was all done as one script, too. The script was like 220 pages, I think.
Good God.
And it was just the whole thing. And, but then it was, I read the story about when and why they decided to split it up into two, and I forget what it is now. But, either way, it was an idea that he and Uma Thurman had while they were making Pulp Fiction. And he actually, like, started it back then.
Okay.
And then he put it in a drawer and just kind of...
Forgot about it.
I guess was waiting until more came to him.
Makes sense.
His Bastards was another one of those ones that just sat in a drawer forever. And he was... I guess it was... He had the idea that he wanted to make a kung fu movie. And it was her idea that the opening of the movie was her wearing a wedding dress. And she was like beat to shit and laying on the ground in the opening shot. And they took it from there.
Of course.
I didn't really... It was interesting when these came out, because... When the first one came out, because I wasn't really... I don't think I had seen a Tarantino movie yet.
Really?
I think it was right before Volume 2 was going to come out that I started seeing Tarantino's movies. Like, I saw Reservoir Dogs first, of course.
Makes sense.
And went from there. And the only thing I knew... This was back when I was still pretty squeamish. Like, I've seen enough movies now to where I'm not really like that now, but... I was very nervous about seeing the first Kill Bill because all anybody talked about was the
violent content.
Just the geysers of blood out of every possible place on the body.
Oh, yeah.
But then, of course, you know, when you actually see the movie and you know Tarantino's style, you get to appreciate that it's intentionally as over-the-top as possible. And of
course.
It's just part of the fun because it's so unrealistic. You know, People tend to give him a hard time for his over-the-top violence, but he's like... He's obviously very careful with his violence because he always tends to back it up with comedy or make it like... Some people get disturbed when people say the violence in Kill Bill is fun, but it's because that is in no way realistic whatsoever.
I see why you say that, but I can understand why other people wouldn't.
Well, what's great is if you look on YouTube, this was really popular at the time. And I think it's simply called Tarantino Owns a Reporter.
Oh, that's awesome. And
it's this woman that's going off on him because it might sound crazy, but he was able to back it up. That's why the video is called Tarantino Owns a Reporter. This reporter was throwing a fit because Tarantino said that people should take their kids to see Kill Bill. And yeah, that does sound insane.
It does.
But he said, his argument was, and he finally snapped on that reporter during that Django interview because he's just so tired of being asked this, about the people understanding the difference between real life violence and movie violence.
Of course. And
he said that he thinks we underestimate kids about how they fathom what's real and what isn't.
Yeah.
And he thinks that they'd get a kick out of how fun and how crazy Kill Bill is. And most people took his side in that argument, so... But then, you know, that argument's going to be till the end of time. His next few movies, even after he went off on that reporter, he'll still get the same shit, but I'm sure he's prepared for that. But the thing is the first Kill Bill is so gruesome. They had to do it in different ways.
Yeah.
Like with Erwin's backstory, it's the anime. And at one point it goes into black and white. At one point they're silhouettes.
Yeah.
They mask it as much as they can.
It's very skillfully done, too.
Like the black and white shot of her ripping the guy's eye out. But then when it goes back into color, you just see the remains of the bloodbath that took place all over the giant room. I kind of like the if ever there was a movie that showed off that signature Tarantino style of being not in chronological order.
Yeah.
I thought it was really skillful the way they did the obviously it one might maybe cry spoiler because I mean use your common sense, obviously, you know, you should know this already, but I suppose if you really wanted to, you could cry spoiler when the opening happens and we see the bride get shot, and then it goes into the opening credits. And then after that, the very first scene of Kill Bill is her pulling up to Vernita Green's house, and we see the list, and Oren's name's already crossed off. Because it takes place after the rest of the events of the movie.
Yeah.
But the great thing about that is Tarantino wants to pull you in immediately. And like really just put this right in your face so you know what you're in for the rest of the movie. If we had gone right into the Oren story, it would have been kind of lulling for a while. But since he mixed up the order and put Vernita Green's story first, the very first, I love how she pulls up in the pussy wagon, and it's this very lovely sitcom style house with like the toys outside, and it's like this. There might as well be. There wasn't an actual picket fence there, I don't think, but there should have been.
Yeah,
She walks through the yard and she steps on the squeaky toy, and she knocks on the door, and Vivica A. Fox answers, and she's in like a fucking jogging suit. And then that famous score kicks in, and we see that Vernita Green was part of the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad. And then this big ass fight just tears up the house. That's probably one of my favorite scenes in any Tarantino movie. Is probably the fight with Vernita Green.
It's a great fight.
Especially since it's so sudden, and it's like the very first thing that happens in the whole movie. And then when they go in the kitchen, and you gotta love the foreshadowing, because she says she's gotta fix her daughter's cereal. Well, you have the scene where right in mid fight, we see they're standing in front of the big living room window, and we see the school bus pull in, and it's her daughter. And her daughter doesn't really question too much about the torn apart house and the fact that they're covered in blood.
No, she really doesn't. She seems to be very understanding.
And that's our first encounter when we realize that Tarantino's not going to tell us the bride's name right away, because they beep it out when she says it.
Yeah.
Even though you can see it on her plane ticket when she leaves.
I got a really funny answer about that. Everybody knows I work in a movie theater. There's actually was a message that was sent out to projectionists. This was way before I did anything like that. That actually said there would be an audible, loud beep sound in the middle of the movie, and to caution people that it was there. So when the bride's name is said the first time, you hear this ginormous, loud as all get out beep. And it just like blurs out her name, obviously.
I didn't see it in the theater. It's actually not that loud on DVD.
And in a theater, it's very loud. And we actually were told to let people know about the loud sound that's going to come out of the nowhere in the movie, because it's a quiet moment, and then all of a sudden you just hear this big sound, and that's pretty much
it's
it.
Like the car alarm 28 Days Later.
That's exactly what it's like. That makes perfect sense.
So they go in the kitchen. And I love how this plays out. The foreshadowing is she says she has to make her daughter cereal. And the box she pulls out, the cereal's called Kaboom.
Yeah.
And you think something is fishy, because what mother just randomly makes their daughter a bowl of cereal when they get home from school? Like,
Yeah.
I guess we're supposed to assume maybe it's some weird routine they have or something.
Potentially.
And this happens twice in the series. It happens at the very beginning and the very end. It like bookends it. But what happens is they build up this massive fight. She asks Vernita Green how she wants to die, and Vernita says, "We're gonna dress all in black. We're gonna dress all in black, and we're gonna go out to a baseball diamond, and we're gonna have a knife fight." And you're imagining this, and you're like, "Whoa, this sounds awesome! I can't wait to see this."
Yeah.
But then, of course, the Kaboom cereal box has a gun in it. And when she shoots at the bride very quickly reacts by kicking the coffee cup at her and then throwing a knife at her and killing her instantly.
Very anticlimactic fight.
And then, of course, there's, there was a bunch of build-up about a Kill Bill 3, which, number one, doesn't make sense unless you give it a new title. And number two, just seems unnecessary. But, I hear it's dead anyway.
Well, we know what the story would be if that were the case.
Obviously, after she's killed Vernita Green, Vernita's daughter comes in, and she says, when you grow up, if you want to come after me, I'll be ready, or something like that.
And enough time has passed now, elapsed between all of the movies, it makes sense for this movie to actually happen.
Yeah, as of this year, the first Kill Bill is 10 years old. It was 2003. So, and then we go from there, we go back to her being in the coma, and then we're introduced to Elle Driver. We learn that we learned this in text. With Vernita Green, we learned it from the Bride's voiceover, but all of the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad is named after snakes.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can remember.
That made it very nerve-wracking for me watching the movie.
The Bride is Black Mamba, which is really funny because it pisses Vernita Green off that, for obvious reasons, she should be Black Mamba.
Yeah.
But she was Copperhead.
Mm-hmm.
Oren is Cottonmouth, Bud is Sidewinder, and Elle Driver is California Mountain Snake.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
I remember the poster very well.
Still
have that somewhere in this place.
And you have, I guess it's been around for a while, but Twisted Nerve, which is now just called the Kill Bill Whistle, which was used to affect in the first season of American Horror Story, funnily enough.
Really?
And it's, the very last scene in the very last episode of the first season of American Horror Story is the sound of Twisted Nerve, more or less.
That's awesome.
And of course she's gonna go kill the bride, but of course Bill calls her and says not to. And that's when we're introduced. The interesting thing is, I read about this.
Okay.
Apparently, every single I think there was like one exception. I can't remember. Regardless, to finish that out, and the bride wakes up, and the rest is history.
Of course.
Because the guy that's in all those Sandler movies is gonna rape her, like Buck has been. By the way, the line "My name is Buck and I'm here to fuck" is from. It's actually a decent movie, even though it's really dated. But there's a movie from the 70s called Eaten Alive. It's about a villain that keeps it's an alligator or a crocodile.
Oh, nice.
And he feeds his victims to it. But there's a redneck played by Robert Englund named Buck.
That's great.
And the very first scene of the movie is him undoing his belt buckle, and he says the same line. And that's where it came from.
That's pretty awesome. I did not know that.
Because when I first saw Eaten Alive, I heard that and I was like, what? And I researched and I was like, oh, of course, that's where he got it from. What I read was apparently everybody that dies in a Kill Bill movie is killed by a woman.
Yeah.
And I guess people, apparently there's some people that don't like it, but then there's I think it's feminist groups. Like, some people oppose it because women are so abused in his movies, but at the same time, a lot of women love Quentin because a lot of his movies empower women, as you can see, with this and Death Proof.
Death Proof, which we'll discuss next week.
And Jackie Brown. Everybody that's killed in a Kill Bill movie is killed by a woman, apparently. And I read somewhere the body count for the first Kill Bill is supposedly like in the 90s.
Yeah, Crazy 88 is enough right there.
I'm wondering if they just put 88 because we actually learned in Kill Bill 2 there weren't really 88 of them.
Yeah.
Because Bill's theory is I guess they thought it sounded cool.
Yep.
Let's talk about a couple of the Bills. There were two people that were approached to play Bill before David Garrett.
Okay.
Kevin Costner.
That would have been
was
amazing.
the first one. but he dropped out to do open range.
He made the wrong decision.
Yeah, kind of like dropping out of Django. One of these days, Costner will take a Tarantino role.
He'll be in the next one just to spite everyone else.
And Warren Beatty.
That would have been really awesome.
He said that Warren Beatty would have been more like a James Bond type than the way David Carradine played him. And then apparently what it was he was talking to Warren Beatty about the part, and he said, I want you to play him like David Carradine. And Warren Beatty said, why don't you just cast David Carradine?
Yep, that's exactly what it
So
says right here.
Let's see. It's very interesting. The bride kills however many people in the first Kill Bill. But what's interesting about that is in Kill Bill 2, even though there's Bud and Elle Driver and Bill and anyone else left in this mess, in Kill Bill 2, Bill is the only person she kills. Because Elle Driver kills Bud, and she doesn't actually kill Elle Driver that we know of.
It's true.
I did read, by the way, something very interesting. A lot of people find it kind of jarring when she rips out Elle Driver's eye and the way she reacts.
Mm-hmm.
Like Elle Driver just throwing herself around the trailer and just tearing everything apart in her rage and fear and any other emotion. Apparently during that take, Daryl Hannah was just doing it to make Tarantino laugh. But that actually ended up being the take they used.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that all the members of the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad are all various different forms of snakes. Once again, gotta love IMDb. I've got access to the iPod today, so fans. So basically, they're also enemies of Captain America.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not know that either. So yeah, I'm not a Captain America fan, but I mean, I didn't know that. So.
Everybody talks about a lot of Tarantino's characters are connected and in the same universe, and people are wondering. Well, we'll touch more on this when we do Django, but some people assumed when Django came out that one of the connections, obviously Earl McGraw is in the first Kill Bill, so that's a clear connection. But in the second one, when Bill is going to bury the bride alive, he digs up a grave under the name Paula Schultz. And it's really gross, because apparently Paula Schultz is really ancient, because it's like he just took the casket out and threw it, and it opened. And we just see this gnarled up, green, disgusting corpse off to the side. And some people assume that with her being that old, perhaps
Dr. King Schultz
is related to her.
Yep.
And I guess I actually read this. This was in the trivia too. I don't know what the point of this was. I guess it was just to be something kind of funny. But apparently, when Bud's in the cemetery, he has his headlights on so he can see in the dark.
Of course.
And apparently, the way the headlights hit the corpse, the way its hand is all twisted, apparently it's making like the bunny silhouette.
Nice.
In the lid of the casket. I guess that's just whatever. I might add that it has one of the greatest Tarantino lines of all time. Not lines necessarily, but deliveries. I cannot get enough of. I also read that the bride through the whole movie, the bride does not say a word to Bud, which I find very interesting.
Makes sense.
Bud shoots her with rock salt when she tries to invade his trailer. And then he throws her in the back of his truck and takes her out to the cemetery. And he lifts the tarp that he had her like buried under. And all he says is he looks her right in the eye. We get a point of view shot, and he just says, I've heard the expression before, but it's Madsen's delivery just sells it. His delivery of the line is, wakey wakey. Eggs and bacon. There's almost a wink there.
When I hear the wakey wakey thing, it comes to Oliver Platt and Ready to Rumble.
Wakey wakey, hands off Snakey.
Yes.
Well, this is when we get the story of Pai Mei, who we learn a lot about. I liked the initial idea. It was kind of funny. I had heard that initially Tarantino was going to play him, which I thought was really weird. Apparently what the original idea was to have the actor do it in his native language. It's actually the same guy that plays... John, oh shit, what's his character's name? He's the bald guy that wears the Kato mask in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
It's Johnny something.
Yeah, Johnny Moe.
Yeah. He's the guy that plays Pai Mei, I think. Gordon Liu, I think is his name. And he, please be checking this.
No, I'm taking it right now, don't worry.
Well, anyway, the original idea was to have the actor do it in his normal language, and Tarantino was going to dub over it in English to make it look like one of those really badly dubbed over kung fu movies.
That's awesome.
But they just subtitled it instead. I guess to bring a bit more serious tone to it.
Yeah, Johnny Moe is not listed.
Then there's that's when we get into the this is just all over.
Gordon Liu.
Okay, good.
Got it right here.
This is where the chronological order is all not there. While she's buried alive, we start getting, that's when we get the backstory, the foreshadowing backstory on the 5-point bomb exploding heart technique. With her, and that was supposed to be something else too, but they decided to just do it around the fire, which reminds me of the, I'm sure it's a callback to this scene when Schultz is telling the story of Brunhilde.
Yeah.
And of course, I kind of got stuck on 2 here. Maybe I should go back and talk about her run. I was trying to cover the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad, and I kind of just skipped her.
Yeah, you might want to bring her
Kind of
up.
like the movie did. That was the problem. Okay, so we're treating this review like a Tarantino movie now.
And Gogo Yubari, of course.
Yeah, who was one of the girls in Battle Royale, I think.
Yep, that is correct.
So, okay, so yeah, we're going to Tarantino this ourselves. We started with Vernita Green, and then we went to Elle Driver and Bud. Let's go back to Oren now.
That works.
Alright, we get her backstory in that long anime segment, which is really disturbing.
Yeah.
Like, that's like more violent and disturbing than anything else that's in the movie that's live action.
Mm-hmm.
Like we see her assassinate that guy in the limo, and we get a shot of the girls in his limo through the bullet hole in his head. There's the guy that's, the guy she wants revenge on, and she stabs him while he's in bed, and he, bites down, and his teeth break.
Yeah, it's pretty out there.
Ah, God. Okay. And then, of course, she's full of badassery. They build her up to be this big thing, and then Lucy Liu does her thing. We see Lucy Liu, and we think she's harmless because she looks like Lucy Liu.
But no.
Boss Tanaka, I think, is the guy that pisses her off. He's yelling at her because of her, because she's like Chinese, Japanese, and American or something. And he doesn't like the fact that she's got American in her, I think is the problem. So while he's screaming at her, she doesn't even react to him screaming. We don't see her reaction at all. The camera just stays on him while he's screaming at her. And then we suddenly cut, and she's running across the table to him. And she cuts his head off. Yeah. And that's where we get our first geyser. And then, just to slap him in the face for what he was complaining about, she addresses everybody in English. And that's when she holds up his head and says, people are going to end up like him. And then her line, if any of you sons of bitches got anything else to say, now's the fucking time. And then she throws the head down and basically establishes herself.
Yeah.
And then I don't think we see her again until they're all converging at the place, and they play the fucking Green Hornet theme.
Yes.
Apparently there's no original score, it was all pre-existing songs. I think is what Tarantino said. And then you have the big battle where, I found this very interesting that I read about and I never really thought about it. The bride decides that she wants a Hattori Hanzo sword.
Yeah. To
get her revenge with. So she actually goes there and has him make one. He does not do that anymore, but it's when she name drops Bill. You have that really dramatic moment where she is talking about who she wants to get revenge on, and without even saying his name, Hanzo figures it out and like writes Bill's name in the window. And then this goes on for a month. It takes him a month to do it, and then it's this legendary sword. After all that build up, Ren is the only one that's killed with it.
Yep. Rather brutally, by the way, too.
Yeah, the
scalping.
Yeah, she gets Ray Liotta'd by it. I'm sorry, I referenced a hated movie like Hannibal, discussing a beloved movie like Kill Bill. And then, of course, the big line, that's when she realizes it really was a Hattori Hanzo sword by the time she's lost half of her head. And then we see Ren's name getting crossed off. And then he drops a bombshell to Sylvia Fatale that the bride's daughter, because obviously she was pregnant when she the thing happened. And she thinks it died, but of course it didn't. She, I guess. Gotta be PC. Babies are not its, I guess. I also didn't talk about the church scene yet. I've never been able to spot him, but obviously Rufus is Samuel L. Jackson in Kill Bill 2. And I think the guy that plays the bride's fiance, I think is somebody known.
What's his name? I have the cast list right here. The groom, he is uncredited. Christopher Allen Nelson.
Apparently, you, among other people, you can see Rufus's body, played by Samuel L. Jackson, when the McGraws come in the first one to investigate the bloodbath. When we finally see that scene in the second one, it's a really good scene. It's one of those ones where it really does the trademark. Tarantino does really long scenes, but you don't realize it. Like, I think the opening scene in the church is like the entire first 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
And we get our first glimpse of Bill, because they never showed his face in the first one. And that's, of course, when he keeps calling her kiddo, which, of course, everybody just assumes is a term of endearment when then halfway through the movie we realize he's calling her by her last name. And, of course, he's playing the flute that he had in that show Kung Fu, the one that Jules references.
Yes.
Let's see, what did I not cover?
Like I said, you really didn't talk about Gogo Yubari very much. That battle was really awesome, though.
Yeah, I think she's kind of an overrated character, though. She's like, Gogo Yubari is like the Boba Fett of Kill Bill.
I don't know about that.
She's built up, and then she has, like, she's a little more useful than Boba Fett is.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
But not by much. She's mostly build up, and then one scene.
Her battle with the bride is good, and I like the way she meets her end, too. I thought that was a really well done scene.
All the blood in the eyes and everything.
Yes, so awesome.
Alright, and then we get to the big ending, which is a really, really, really long dialogue scene. This scene's like maybe, 35 minutes long?
Yeah.
Where, that's also the pregnancy test scene is thrown in the middle of that.
Mm-hmm.
And he decides to, apparently what was not featured in these movies, but was like a background thing in the scripts, was, apparently Bill is a chemist.
Yeah, I was reading that in this, actually.
And I guess he created whatever that was that Eldar was going to inject into her in the first one and never did.
Mm-hmm.
And then he made that, truth serum thing that that was apparently supposed to be featured in the first one, but never was, and then it's what he shoots her with in the second one. When he does of all things, he does his monologue about superheroes. Like about how Peter Parker dresses up as Spider-Man, but Clark Kent is not you know, Clark Kent is the disguise that Superman puts on.
Yeah.
And all that. And of course she meets her daughter in this scene, and they do the happy family thing, like he's making her sandwiches with the crust cut off and everything. Bill is making Baby a sandwich with this gigantic Michael Myers kitchen knife. And then after this long dialogue, they finally, her thing throughout the movie is saying, you and I have unfinished business. She said it to Oren, she said it to Vernita. She didn't get a chance to say it to Bud or L Driver, but and then they do it again. They bring back what happened with Vernita. Apparently this was actually supposed to happen, but Weinstein was afraid the movie was going to run too long. She was going to be in her wedding dress, and they were going to be on a moonlit beach, and they were going to have a sword fight to the death. And they talk about this. And once again, you get that image in your head, and you're like, man, this would be awesome. And it turns out this is probably the shortest sword fight in movie history. It's a few swings, and then she brings back the 5-point bomb exploding heart technique, which has a lot of meaning in it, because, you know, she's able to have that last dialogue with him before he basically decides to die, because he's got to do the 5 steps thing. And then, it shows, apparently, we're supposed to assume Pai Mei would teach nobody the 5-point bomb exploding heart technique, which means she's, like, a really big deal.
Obviously.
So then, you know, he walks away and bites it. And then it brings that human quality in, because they had, like, a romance. And so afterwards, she's finally done what she set out to do this whole time. And then the movie ends with her having, like, an emotional breakdown in the bathroom. Because of it. And then, of course, she goes out and watches TV with Baby, and the movie ends. And it's a very interesting credit sequence, where it's a credit sequence that is for the whole thing. People who we haven't seen since the first one get credit in this, because it's like just one big thing. And then there's that thing everybody loves, where we see, David Carradine doesn't get it, because it says Uma Thurman, David Carradine, and then it goes into the cast list, and it says Lucy Liu, and Lucy Liu's name gets crossed off. It says Vivica A. Fox, her name gets crossed off. Michael Madsen, his name gets crossed off, and then Daryl Hannah gets a question mark. And then we go into a RZA score for the ending, but the thing was the rest of the movie is scored by Robert Rodriguez, not Sugar Man. This is what's funny though, was Robert Rodriguez did the score for Kill Bill 2 for $1. And to explain what happened in the future, what everybody knows about, the same year, Tarantino did his one scene for Sin City for $1 in return.
Of course.
So, that's pretty much that. Yeah, I was kind of all over the place with this one, but this movie is so all over the place, it's kind of... You can't really, you know, review them and be coherent, because they themselves aren't. So, using the joy of chapter skipping and switching out DVDs over and over again, I actually went through the trouble of watching these in chronological order once.
Once.
I had a lot of time on my hands that day.
Fair enough.
So, yeah. You gotta love the contrast of how, Kill Bill is all blood and guts, literally. And Kill Bill 2, 3 people die? 4 people die if you count Pai Mei. Which we only see briefly, because we learned that, L Driver killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's hardly any blood in it. Like, we see L Driver's eye, and Bill has some blood coming out of his mouth. I guess you wouldn't count the skinning of her knuckles when she's trying to do the punch thing. That's actually as bad as it gets.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was I always did like that, how it's not one. There's one that's one, and then there's one that's the other. Tarantino's known for his over-the-top violence in his dialogue, and you have one movie for one of those and one movie for the other. But it isn't to say that Kill Bill doesn't have its dialogue moments, because it does. But it's not truly, really Tarantino-like until the second one, when you get these really long dialogues. Like when Bud is laying on the floor dying, and Elle Driver's reading him information she looked up online about the snake. And she uses the word gargantuan. She actually stops in the middle of what she's saying just to say, she's so pleased to use gargantuan in a sentence.
Yeah.
So, yeah, apparently there's talks about the third one. And the third one still has an IMDb page, but last I heard, it's probably dead. And I hope so, because, you know...
Why mess with greatness?
Well, you know... It would be him doing it, so...
Yeah.
You know... But I just don't think it's necessary, I guess, for the story.
You can continue the story, but you're really going to have to, like, change some things up and do a lot of, like, background and...
And killing at Kill Bill Volume 3 seems a little illogical.
True.
So, you know, whatever. And it would just be this endless chain anyway. It would never end, because... Let's say Vernita Green's daughter killed the bride.
Okay.
Killed Beatrix. Okay?
Okay.
So, then you'd have Vernita Green's daughter being approaching BB and saying the same thing. And it would just be this endless chain forever. So...
It's true.
You know, why don't we just quit while we're ahead? Maybe Vernita Green's daughter used it to better herself. I don't know how or why, or in what way, but I don't know. So, and she shouldn't be hard to find either, because the very first time we heard Beatrix say her name, she was introducing herself to Vernita Green's daughter.
Yeah.
So we didn't hear it, but she did.
Obviously.
So, yeah, I think that's about it. So, next will be Grindhouse.
That's going to be fun. We had talked about the trailers, too.
Yeah.
One of which actually made an actual movie.
Yeah,
which we'll review later in this.
Being that it's a Tarantino segment, I'll try to spend more time on Death Proof, but it'll mainly be Grindhouse as well, because apparently they pretty much... They're two separate movies, but apparently they, you know, were pretty much prominent through each other's movies, so...
Okay.
We'll see what happens with that. So, until then.